All right, this is going to be a demonstration on the playing with pixels, kind of the second part where you get to choose your own photos and process. But what I want to do in this particular one, I'm going to use some different images, but I'm going to show just what my process would look like. I showed you what the demo was that was kind of included on Canvas, but I'm just going to go through this process and do it the way I would do it if I was doing a real project. So first off, I'll show you the images that I've grabbed, and you'll probably get an idea of what I'm going for. So I've got this image of an octopus, and I've got this image of an underwater scene. I've got a water texture, and then I've got this woman standing here. So I'm going to combine these four images together and try to make them look like they're a single scene. So right off the bat, what I'm going to do is I can just open all these up in Photoshop if I want to do this. So I'll say open with Photoshop. And what I'll get these four separate documents. But what I want to do is I want to collect all these together into one document. So I'm going to use a script. So under File, if I come down to Scripts, there's load files into stack. And load files into stack is just a way to combine files into a single document. So I open this up. I can say I want to either browse and look for the images that are on my desktop. I could add them this way. Or the other way I can do it is, since I've got these already open, I can say add these open files that way as well. Or I can do a combination of different things. I can go around and just kind of select all the different images I want to select and put them all into one document. You can also do some cool things like you can attempt to automatically align source images. So if you had like four images that were kind of similar, like four shots of a person, it will try to it'll look at them and go and try to line them up, whether it needs to move them around or rotate them a little bit. So that's also kind of a handy way when you're bringing these together. I'm not going to try to align anything because there's nothing similar in here. And this create a smart object after loading layers, I don't want to do this either, because what that does is it will take all of my layers and it'll smash them into one smart object, and I want them to be separate. So I'll say OK, and now it will goes through, basically copies all these and creates this new document. It's called Untitled1. So first thing I'm going to do is save this document. There we go. Okay, we're going to go desktop and playing with pixels 2 and naming convention. Okay, naming convention, I'm just copying this from Canvas, so I don't have to retype it. First name, your last name. I don't really care about this, so I'm going to just name it with what it says. Okay, so I've got my document saved. I'm safe. And then the next thing I like to do is, and you'll notice that when it combined these, it brought them in and called it octopus.jpg, underwater background.jpg, exactly what the file names were, and it brought those files in exactly the way they are. These are basically exact duplicates of those original documents. So I want to protect these documents. I'm going to just close these other documents back here that we used to open these up, and then for each one of these I'm going to come in and convert to a smart object. Convert to smart object. I can always take a smart object and release the pixels basically out of the smart object if I want to, so there's no reason that I shouldn't make one into a smart object to begin with. Okay, so I've got these files all put together, and you notice also it created a canvas size that's the size of the combined pixels of everything I have in here. So I can kind of look at this and go, this is my resolution that I could possibly create, and my background underwater scene is basically my biggest image that's in here. You can see its other ones are smaller, but this is the maximum pixel size. So I don't want to make anything bigger than this, but I can scale down from this size. So looking at this underwater scene, right now I'm going to go, okay, this looks like this is a pretty good size. So if I want to scale this background to this proper size, I can say image, and in the image we can trim. Instead of cropping, this is just another way to crop. Trimming, what it does is you have some different options. You can have it trim off all the transparent pixels, so in that case it'll get rid of this bottom. Or I'll go back to the octopus one here. It's a little different. So the octopus one here, I can say I want to trim to the top left pixel color, because the top left pixel color is white. We'll see how well this works. Is that okay? Oops. Get rid of this. See what's going on. Okay, trim top left pixel color, and it may not do. Yeah, that's what it is. It's not doing anything because top left pixel color is white, but the window here for info. Okay, this info window is just going to show us information about what's underneath our cursor. And we'll zoom in here a little bit. So even though this is white back here, the values of the white in the RGB, as I move it around, are going to change just a little bit. So when it looks at the top left pixel color, it goes, that's white-ish, and the pixel next to it is a little bit different white. So we can't really do that. If the background was perfectly white, I'm going to force it to be white. Pixel color, and now you can see, so I forced it to be white, and so this is what it did. It looked at it and said, okay, we're going to do it by white, and so it found everywhere that was white and it cropped in as far as it could around that. So that's another way to use the trim. Back in here. If I have the background here and say I trim this background down to the transparent pixels, so it's just like this. But if I had another image that was in here that was larger, and I wanted to be able to show what it was, we'll pretend like, we'll say that this is the one we want to see now. What you can do in this case is say image, reveal all, and what it'll do is it'll show anywhere where there's pixels on the canvas, it will show where those are. So even though the octopus is going off the artboard here, there's still information there, and so it will reveal the canvas out to that point. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but I wanted to give you just an idea of how you can use the trim and reveal all in here to kind of automatically set a canvas based on the pixels you have. Okay, so this is based off of the maximum size I can really make this document. And that's good to know. Okay, so I want to, first off, I'm going to make my underwater background, go to the background layer, and I need to start composing these elements together. So I am going to start with the girl here, and I want the mask for her to be actually inside the smart object. So I will open the smart object up, and then I am going to make a selection. Several ways to make the selection. I can use the quick select tool in this one. She doesn't have a white background, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of work to separate her. So using the quick select tool, you guys know how to use this. I can come in here and just select real quick. Did a really pretty good job there. Grab a little more there. I'm using the right and left bracket key just to make the brush bigger and smaller. Oops. My hand And this is where we'll get a little bit tricky. Skin tones are a little bit close to the background, so it's struggling with that. And you can see it's a little bit blurry, so that makes it a little bit more of a challenge too. The important thing in doing this kind of project is, especially the way I'm working with smart objects here, is that you can go down a rabbit hole of wasting time trying to get everything perfect, but things don't actually need to be perfect in all cases. If you're going to put an image into another, compose two images, and one of them is going to be really small, well, going in there in great detail like this may not matter because it may be so small you can't see it. So what I do typically is I come in here and I'm gonna do, a good enough job. I'm not going to worry about all the little details necessarily. I'm just going to try to do a pretty good job. And photo's definitely a little bit of a challenge right over here. Just move that a little bit right there. Okay. So I've got a rough, decent mask, and then what I usually do is I will come in to my selected mask to try to refine this. I'm gonna just save this as a channel real quick. We'll come back to it. The other way to create this selection that isn't the quick select tool, and I do recommend trying this, is going in and just telling Photoshop to select the subject first. There's two options in here. There's a cloud and there's a device option. Try either one of them. Cloud's a little bit slower, but it might give you better details. Device is faster and it might give you a little less details, but sometimes the device one will give you better results. You just don't know until you try. So I'm going to do select subject, and it's going to just try to use artificial intelligence to find the subject. And you'll see, it did a pretty good job, really. I mean, I want to look it over and see if it's missing anything. But I'm pretty amazed at how good of a job Photoshop is able to do on its own. And I can always come in here with my quick select tool afterwards and remove some of the areas that maybe the artificial intelligence wasn't able to pick up on. So it's not perfect. I may still have to make some corrections, but it gets me there faster. And anything I can do to speed things up means that I may not be able to do things quicker overall, but it means I get to spend time doing things that make sense rather than spending time wasting my time on drawing the mask pixel by pixel. So this is another, oops. And remember too that when you're doing, I'll come in and do the arm here, but when you're doing your selection, you can always look at the quick mask. And I'll show you how we want to deal with that in just a moment here. Just get rid of this stuff. Getting close. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about getting too far in the nitty-gritty details. So I can also hit the Q key or down here underneath the toolbar to go into my quick mask mode. This is this is a good thing I should show. So quick mask by default is red, and that will work 97% of the time, we'll say. But if for some reason you're working on a red background and you want to use a quick mask and it makes it so you just can't see, you can change the color by double clicking on this and saying, I would rather this be blue. for example, and it will give you a blue background. Switch this back. Okay, so now I want to show you just using the quick bounce mode and the brush just to refine this a little bit. So clicking on B for brush, and where her arm here, it's just really blurry, and so it's not picking that up very well. And rather than going in and trying to do a quick select, going back and forth, I'm going to just paint this in. And so when I paint it in, I've got the white and black over on the side. I've got my brush. Anything I paint with the white is going to basically deselect an area, and if I hit X, it will flip the white and black. So if I go to black, it'll paint those areas in and deselect it. So I just hold my finger over the X key, and I can switch back and forth as I paint. So I just am going to paint along this area, and then when I get to an area where I feel like there's kind of a straight line, and this is great for like body contours, I just hold the shift key and I can kind of see where the edge is. I can go click right there, find another edge, click right there, find another edge, click, 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 and it makes it fairly smooth. If I don't like the results, I can come back and just do it over again a little bit. Like this is, there's too much of the background showing now, so I can go and hit X, and I'm going to paint this area back in. And this is a great way to smooth things out. This is going to give you smoother results than the subject select or the quick select tool in areas that are kind of fuzzy. Do this real quick. There are just a number of different ways to create selections, and I can't necessarily tell you which way to use each time, because I myself kind of look at a scenario and might try a couple different approaches to it to find the best one. And Photoshop has been adding new ways of making selections constantly because it's one of the most important things you can do in Photoshop. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time messing with this selection. Let's see. I guess I will look at one thing here. I'm going to look at going here to my selection and show you in the select and mask. So in select and mask, it's going to show me how good that selection is. I might come in here and just look at the hair and go, is there areas of the hair that I want to kind of adjust and fix? And so I just kind of paint along and see what it does, whether it brings back some strands of hair or kind of hide some things. And this is definitely doing some weird stuff that will give us a challenge, but I'll show you how to deal with this when we get into the water blending. Now, this is something else that I've noticed. This is a bit of a glitch that happens sometimes with Photoshop in the recent version, where it's just giving this weird edge when you do like a quick selection, and it'll just do this weird little thing. I don't know why, but you can just come back and paint over it again and try to fix it. But if you see that, it's not your computer, it's something that Adobe needs to fix. Worry about all this, we'll come back later. Okay, so we're going to say that this selection is good enough for this for right now. So I'm inside the smart object. I can create a mask to go over her here, and then I can close this, and it's going to ask me if I want to save it. I can say, yeah, let's save it. And now here she is in this scene. Now, based on how big she's going to be, will tell me whether my mask is good enough or not, and how I want to treat it. So if I am going to see her hands, I might want to come in and fix that. But it's easier for me to come in and fix the mask and see what it looks like on the background than it is to kind of arbitrarily do it in another image. So that's one of the other reasons that I like to make smart objects and mask them with all the images combined. I want to see what's going to look like in the actual space. So that's the first step there. In the next one, this octopus, I'm going to mask him out. Come in. Again, I'm going to use the magic wand tool here and just see what the background is made of. Click and When you're using a magic wand tool, you will want to make sure your anti-alias is turned on. And contiguous, you may or may not want to have that. What contiguous does is if I deselect this, if I don't have contiguous selected, it will go select inside of the areas here too, which can be good. Like in this one, it's like, okay, yeah, I probably do want to select inside these areas, but sometimes it gets carried away. You see like down here, it's started selecting some things that I don't necessarily want to have selected. So most times I'll have this contiguous turned on and choose my areas one at a time. So I click and then I'll just shift click to add these areas in. The other thing you can do too in making a selection is if I select this and I want to grab the other areas that look like this, I can go into my selection menu here and say I want to select similar, and it will just try to find like all the white areas and select them. It's kind of like doing contiguous, but it's a separate step. You want to grab something by color. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Just the selection. Let's see how bad it is. That's not great. That's not terrible. I'm gonna live with it for right now. I think that's good enough. We can always come back and adjust it. Again, working quickly is a good thing. Okay, so quick mask. Turn that back in, and I'm gonna mask this. Oh, I need to make sure. Right now I've got the background selected, so if I masked it, it will give me it will knock out everything that I don't want to knock out. So I want to select the inverse and mask. There we go. And then I can save this and close it. One of the things you'll notice that when I save it and close it now, if I go to transform this layer, it's transforming all of this big area outside of even where the octopus is. And that's not necessarily what I want to have happen in all cases. So what I can do is if I open up my smart object again, and this is where it's handy to go in and say, I'm going to image trim this document and have it trim transparent pixels away. And now when I save this and close it, and now if I go to transform, my transform area is going to only impact just the octopus area. I don't have any wasted space. Okay, so I've got that taken care of, and then my water texture, that's in here. That water texture, it's not as big as the background area, which can be a problem in some cases, but I'm just going to use it as a texture, and I'm going to use it over the woman to try to help make it look like she's underwater. You'll have to bear with me because I haven't actually done all this yet, so this is going to be the first time seeing how it actually turns out. Okay, so turn the woman on, put her in here, and octopus. I'm trying to get the two kind of interacting here, so I am going to let's kind of rotate this around. Go. Now I need to do some adjustment layers to make them look like they're in this blue kind of background area. So I am going to go in and I'm going to look at hue saturation over the top of my octopus. So this is kind of a trick. Whenever you create a new adjustment layer, it automatically creates a mask for you. I'm sure that there's a reason that Adobe decided to do this, but I don't understand what it is, and I don't like it. It makes it so that every time I do this, I have to watch out for making when I'm making my mask because there's already one in place. So what I do is if I go into my layer menu, let's see, panel options, and I want to use default mask on this. Oh, I also like to get rid of add copy to copied layers. There we go. So say OK, and now see if I've made it work right. I'm going to go hue saturation, and oh, that didn't work. Adjustment layers. Now I'll come back to that. I know it's right in here somewhere. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Okay. I'm going to live with it. Hue saturation. And oops, that's why I hate the mask. Okay. Hue saturation. I'm just going to take the hue saturation. I want to first make sure it's applying only to the octopus. So if I don't do this, and let's say I'm going to take the hue and twist it around, you see that it's affecting the woman, it's affecting the background. And that's not what I want to do. I don't want to create the entire psychedelic scene. I just want to shift the color of the octopus. So rather than creating a mask, what I can do is hold my Option key down, click, and it will only affect the octopus layer underneath it. So now when I move the hue around, it's only affecting that. That's just the fastest, best way to create a mask. So I'm just trying to basically get the octopus, this color, to kind of be blue like the background. And I don't necessarily want to go too crazy, but I'm just going to create, I like to go a little bit crazy with it to begin with, and then what I do is in my layer, I will come in and change the opacity of it, and then I can start to kind of bring his color back if I want to. But it starts to give me a little bit of the color tint that I might be looking for. So that's getting a little bit more color. You can also play with your blend modes in here. So if I go in and say I want to do like let's see, I want to do a color layer would be one that I could do. I could also come in, and if I make a copy of it, it will like do it again, but I can change this to a, let's see, we'll try like we'll go ahead and do color burn maybe. Change saturation, and you can stack these up, and you can see again, this layer is only impacting the layers that are below it. Okay, so this is kind of where I'm going to stay with this. And then sometimes I want to name this. Layer names are always important, so I will call this Octo Hue Saturation, just in case I get a bunch of these going. I know which one's which. Okay, I've got that in place, and then the woman, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put a hue saturation on her, and get rid of the mask. Make sure that it's applying only to her, and then take that color and bend it around a little bit until she starts looking a little bit bluish. There we go, a little Smurf-like. And then I can take the saturation of that, bring it down to a color that feels a little bit more natural. So I want it to look like she's in the water, she's got this blue tint, but I don't necessarily want to go too crazy with it. Okay, so I've got them kind of together now, and then I've got this water texture, and it's a smart object. Normally I wouldn't want to bring these up in size, but I don't really care. It's just going to be for demonstration, and it's just going to be a texture. So I can bring this above here. I'll bring it above everything because I want to be over the octopus as well. And there's different ways to do this. So I'm going to show you some fun things with layers here. So I want to have this water affect the octopus and her, but I kind of, again, I try to avoid having to make masks if I can avoid it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the water texture here and all the way to the woman here, all of this stuff. I want to combine these elements. Actually, I'm going to get let's see, the woman. Dash. Saturation. Okay. Taking these 4 layers and I'm going to group them together. The way you can either, if you group them, it will create a layer or create a folder, or if you come down here and say, oops, come down here and click on the folder, it will combine them all together in a folder, and then you can just name these. I'll call it. I'm just gonna call it subjects. So now the cool thing is that inside this folder, all that stuff still exists just the way it was, but I can move this folder around and it'll move everything inside of it around. And then this sort of acts like a single layer. So if I want this water texture to apply to the woman and the octopus, I'm just gonna put this over the top of everything here. And then I want to make it impact just the layer underneath it. So again, I'm going to option click it, and it's just going to automatically only impact the area underneath it. It's automatically masked, and that's where I can come in and say, I want to multiply that and change the opacity to like 30. Let's see, there's other ways of doing this. There is actually some texture, some saturation things if I want to play with this. The color kind of gets us part of the way there. What I might do actually is I don't want to add more blue color, I just want the texture to come in. So I am going to open this up, I'm going to put an adjustment layer on this in black and white. When I do this black and white, I'm going to make it dramatic, so I can go into the cyans here and go make that a little bit more in depth and then move the blues around. Sorry, I'm kind of mumbling through this process, but hopefully you're understanding what I'm doing to some extent. Okay, just want to see how I can increase contrast in here a little bit. Then I can go out of here and save it. And now I'm dealing with just a black and white image in here. So when I'm multiplying and things like that, I'm affecting the dark and the light, but I'm not actually affecting the color. Some different options in here to see what happens. Ooh, it's an interesting one. So if you want to have something that has this weird kind of dramatic, but you don't want only that, you can make a copy of this layer. I'll go in and say multiply, and then this other one that's here, the hard mix one, I can go down and turn that to like 5% or something. So you can see what that does is it gives it a little bit of this interesting kind of highlight area. So I like doing this because you can go in and experiment, turn layers on, turn layers off, and I'm not doing damage to any original pixels. Okay, and then like the color of these, I want to put another color cast over the whole thing. So what I might do is go in and create a new layer and go new fill layer, solid color. I'm just going to say blue overlay and select a blue. Say okay. Whoops, didn't actually get my color in there. So choose a color. Okay, this can go on top of everything here. And that. Okay, so now this is where I can maybe come in and say we're going to do some more color to try to bring it up a little bit higher. This color is a little bit weird, but what I can do is when I click on this, I can always go in with my eyedropper tool and actually pick a background color that's out of my scene, and you'll see how that gets it a lot closer to the tint that I'm looking for. So I've got that color, and I can kind of choose that, and then again I can kind of choose my opacity and play around with that a little bit more. Okay. So I'm actually gonna distort these a little bit and try to make these two interact real quick to show you how to manipulate these actual. I would normally come in and do a little more manipulation on these people and the octopus to get the color a little bit better, but we'll pretend like it's great right now. So we'll start with the woman, like her arms. I'm gonna change the position of her arms a little bit, and we're going to do that with Puppet Warp. So I'm gonna go Edit, and we go to, Edit, and Puppet Warp. She's already masked, so it's going to create this nice little grid right over the top of where she's at. Everything that's where I like it already, I can just drop a pin, and the way I drop a pin is just by clicking. Oops, click twice there, yeah. So, and where I click is kind of wherever a person's joints are. So I'll try to click where their knee would be, and maybe where the other knee is, and then where their femur connects to the hip, the neck, shoulders, and then sometimes I might put some others in here. You kind of have to see how things are going to move around. You never really know. Elbow, wrist, and you can see how this, things will kind of start to move here. How much control you have over it kind of depends on how many pins or nodes. These are called nodes when you drop these in. Because what will happen is you start to get this bended arm, which is not what you want to see, obviously. But what I want to do is I want to get her arm pulled back a little bit more, and so then I can come in. Oops, again, I double clicked it. Oops. Okay, go back. If you've got a pin that you want to remove, you can option click on it and it'll let you remove it. But you can kind of come in and start straightening things out a little bit more if you want to. The other thing you can do with these pins is you can twist them. So if I hold my option key down, I've got this pin selected already, and you can see that I can grab it and twist this pin and turn things a little bit more. So if I want to bend her hand back, I can kind of do that a little bit. Okay. And then maybe I want to move her head down just a little bit more. Fix some distortion. Once I feel like this is okay, I can click OK. The cool thing about this, and I can see I've got some problems here, but the cool thing is, again, that this is, when it's a smart object, it is a Puppet Warp that is a smart filter. So I can turn it off and see what she looked like before and turn it back and see what she looks like here. It's totally non-destructive. I can also go in and the liquefy, where we've talked about this a little bit in the last assignment, but I want to show you some other great things with the liquefy. We go into liquefy, it has the ability to also recognize people. There's an entire section in here about people. Let's see what we got here. And that's in the facial awareness part of it. I'm going to turn some of these things off so we can see this better. So facial awareness, you can see there's eyes, nose, mouth, face shape. It says face one because if you have multiple people in here, it will recognize each person as a separate face. So say I want to change the expression on her face a little bit. I can go in a couple of these and see. smile. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So if I go in and do this, you can see it's, I'll zoom in a little bit more so it's easier to see. You can bend, it's automatically knows where the mouth is, it knows where the eyes are, and lets you kind of bend expressions a little bit. So if I want to make her a little bit more unhappy because she's got the octopus wrapped around her, I can do that, or you can make her a little happier if she's escaping. Either way. So you do that, you can change person's facial features, you can change how big their eyes are. If I want to make her look like she's kind of shocked, so her eyes are kind of popping, I can do that. All sorts of fun things you can do in here. So anyways, this is a really fun thing to play with. It's great with portraits and everything, and you can go kind of crazy. You know, in addition to that, I can still come in and do, you know, I can push pixels around a little bit if I want to distort things a little bit more, make it more cartoon-like. That's easy to do. I want to like make her hair dramatic in some way. Start to play with this. Click OK, and now it's made those adjustments. And again, this is, get rid of this mask. These are smart filters. So liquify, I can turn the liquify on and off. So see what she looks like naturally, and then see what she looks like with the liquify and the puppet warp. I can have them independent. This is just the exact right way to work with everything with the smart object and with the masks done the way they are. Because what we want to do is we want to maintain the original pixels exactly as they came in, and you'll see that if I open up this document, hide the mask, this is exactly the photo that we brought in. I haven't changed, I haven't damaged any original pixels, but I've just manipulated them here in Photoshop. Fix this real quick. Oh, so much fun. Okay. And then we can, okay, click on the octopus. We can do the same thing with the octopus if we want to. We can do the puppet warp and really go crazy with it. The octopus is a little bit easier because it doesn't have joints. It doesn't look so weird when you start moving things around. But then I can try to make it look like he's wrapped around the woman a little bit. Sometimes when you go to make manipulate something, it'll tell you these smart filters will need to be turned off temporarily. That's totally fine. They'll turn back on as soon as you finish making your edit. Oops. I'm going to tell it to stop telling me about that. Okay. Make it a little bit bigger. Okay. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to make it look like it's wrapped around her. So I'm going to go into my quick mask mode first, select my brush, make it black, or in this case it'll be red, a little larger, paint. And all I'm doing is telling it to make a quick selection here. Then I'll actually go back out of this. And what I'm going to do is I have everything, like this area right here is the area that's deselected. Everything else is selected. So on this octopus, if I say make a mask of that right now, it'll hide that one part. And now the cool part is if I select a mask, I can come in with my brush and essentially just paint over the top of this where her body is. And do this here. There's some tricks that I would do with this normally to kind of bring this back, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. I get the idea. So I can kind of wrap that around that way. I think this one would probably go behind too. In some ways, I'm just kind of making quick decisions on this because I can come back and refine what this looks like afterwards. Said it a million times, but this working with smart objects and working in this non-destructive format gives you so much freedom to come back and do things later if you want to, that you just don't normally have. Little glitch. Okay, turn that back on, and then then I'm going to create a little shadow, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to command click on the octopus. That's going to create a selection, and instead of doing a drop shadow, if I do a drop shadow, what will happen is it'll put a shadow everywhere underneath him. Let's see if I can make this a little larger so you can see. So put it everywhere, and I don't want that shadow to show up everywhere. I want it to show up just on her. So instead of using the drop shadow layer effect, I'm going to create a selection. Some of these things are getting a little bit hard to see what's going on in my layers, so I'm going to collapse the effects down. So I've got those created, and then I've got those collapsed down. I'm going to create a new layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just fill that layer with black. And it's going to, basically what it's going to do, well, I'll show you what I'll do here. Fill with foreground color, which is black. You can see I just made an exact, just fill everything with black over the top of where this octopus is. And now I'm going to move it underneath the octopus, and this is going to be this shadow. Okay. See something here. Trying to get rid of that area there. I just want the shadow to go over the top here. So then, okay, so this is going to be the shadow layer. So I got a little bit lost there for a second and kind of explaining some ways that you can deal with this. So as you're getting into the layers, it can get a little confusing. I collapse these layers down to get rid of some of the clutter. But it can still get a little bit confusing. I can make the icons bigger over here, but one of the things that I always find is kind of easy to do is, like, if I really want to separate some things out, what I might do is I might click on this subject, and if I right click on it, there's actually these colors down here, and these are surprisingly effective. So if I color this layer, and if I open it up, it will colorize all these other layers. And the nice thing is that I know that all these layers are inside the subject folder. And if I wanted to colorize these something different, like if I wanted to colorize the octopus elements a certain color and the woman elements a different color, then I can do that. Now that makes it easier to see that, okay, this is the octopus and this is the woman. And I can even take like the octopus layers here if I want to and put those in a folder and name those and give them a color. So there's a lot of organization that can happen, and if you do it right, it just helps you kind of make sense of what you've got going on, but it doesn't hurt any of your process. It just makes it better. So anyways, just kind of a little tip on how to organize layers. Okay, so I've got the shadow created in here, and I will move it so you can kind of see that's the shadow. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to make this into a smart object. Oops. And what I'll do now is I'm going to filter, blur, create a Gaussian blur on this. Fairly large. Okay, there it is. So this is underneath the octopus, but what I want to do is make sure that it only affects the area where the woman is. And so now you can see that this shadow of the octopus here is only showing up over the top of the woman. If I don't have it stacked this way, it will show up everywhere. There it is. Again, this is nice because I've made all of these decisions and I've gone in but I can still go in and refine things. If I see something's wrong with her hand, I can go back and fix this. I can go back in and double click on this smart object. I can go back in, look at what that mask looks like. If I want to refine this, say I just want to trim this up a little bit, make it a little bit cleaner. If I want to come in to her, you see where there's some weird things going on with the mask here, I can come in and paint this back in the way it should be. Because all I'm doing is just affecting the mask here. And you see, I totally didn't even bother to do this because it didn't matter. I can come back later and do it. See, sometimes that quick selection tool really it works great sometimes, and sometimes it can create kind of a mess. And it's okay, because we can fix that. Okay. So anyways, that kind of gives you an idea of how you can go in and affect, make some quick decisions, mask things out really quickly. You can always come back and refine them. If I close this, I'm going to save this out. And then you come back in here and we can see the changes I made. And I'll show you one more thing here. On the woman, like if I don't like the way I've done some of the, I don't want to do that. Like with the liquefy that I did on here, made some kind of weird effects to her eyes that maybe I don't necessarily like. So what I can do is on the liquify, I'm going to create quick selection and go add a filter mask. Oops, not what I wanted. And filter mask, there we go. You can, on these filter masks, this is where you can come in and start to do some weird things where you're painting in areas where where you want things to show up or not to show up. Yeah, it's just acting kind of weird right now. Anyways, you can kind of go in and affect things on the actual effects in here as well. I tend to not do that too much. Delete that mask. I tend to just like to go into the actual effect itself and do any special things I want to do. So if I wanted to fix her eyes or something, I would come back into here. And the nice thing is that when you do this, when it's a smart object like this, when I go back and look at how I have changed the eyes, it shows me exactly what I changed. -43 on the eye width. So if I take that back to 0, it'll be back to what it was normally. The eye size, I've got that cranked way up. So if I take that back down to 0 again, so you can do one at a time if you want to, I can bring that back down and bring it back to normal, or I can go really crazy with it. Once you get into doing a lot of these things, it just becomes kind of a fun project if you get into it right. Because if you get into it right, it allows you to go all the way back to the beginning and grab the original photos again and play around with them, or be almost at the end at any given moment. It's just kind of a nice way to work. I'm going to do one last thing here. I'm going to add a new fill layer. We're going to make it a gradient layer. Okay. Say gradient okay. Color here. Choose the color to be, again, kind of the darker background color areas here. So okay. 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 Multiply. And all it's going to do is just give me a little bit of shading down here, and I can apply it again right over that. Get it so that they don't look like they're glowing as much at the bottom. Rabbit hole. All these things are rabbit holes. Hopefully this helps a little bit to understand how to bring these images in a non-destructive fashion. And all these photos are still here in their original form, and I can edit anything all the way through. So yeah. All right. Thanks guys, and looking forward to seeing what you come up with.